Okay, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the 2025 PTG Candidate Forum. I'm so happy so many of you could join us this evening. My name is Abby Flanagan. I'll be your moderator for this evening. I'm an Alcott parent, a VP of the PTG, and a member of the Planning Board, but wearing my PTG hat tonight. We're just going to go over ground rules and format for a little bit, and then we're going to get right into it so we can get as many questions answered as possible. So obviously we're going to start this evening with our candidates for school committee. The second half of the evening will follow the same format, and it will be the candidates for select board. We'll have a brief break in between, and by brief I mean stand up, stretch your legs. We'll swap out candidates and sit back down. So we have enough time to get through all of our questions. The PTGs tonight represented are Alcott, Willard, Thoreau, the middle school, the high school, and CPAC. We submitted a request to our memberships to submit questions in advance. We got about 60 questions, so we obviously had to kind of pick through those and cull them a little bit. Lots of duplicate questions, lots of people interested in the same topics, so that's what we're going to go with. The format is we're going to start with a brief introduction from each candidate, and then we're going to get right into the questions. I have some questions that were submitted in advance. We're also going to have a microphone that will be live for the second half of each panel. And you're welcome to step up to the microphone and ask your question. We'd ask that you identify yourself. If your question is about a topic that's already been covered, you might think about holding that back because we are going to be kind of limited on time. I would ask that your questions be directed to the entire panel. All of the questions tonight will be addressed to all of the candidates. And that I ask that you keep your questions respectful. So the one thing I want to say right off the bat is that all of the people that you'll hear from tonight have taken time out of their busy schedules, their lives, to commit to the civic endeavor of representing all of you. It's a big commitment. It's something that they do for free. And I think, just take a minute to appreciate the fact that they're stepping up. You may disagree with them philosophically, politically, what have you, but I think we can all appreciate their efforts. So. And if anyone gets up and says, I have more of a comment than a question, I'm going to shut you right off. No time for that tonight. Okay, so we're going to start. We're going to move right down the line, and we'll start with candidate introductions. Alexa.
Hi, everybody. My name is Alexa Anderson. I'm running for school committee. I am an incumbent. I'm presently on the school committee. So a little bit about why I'm running. It's really fun for me to be back, not in the high school that I went to from a building perspective, but my old stomping ground in terms of this was where I went to high school. And it really and truly was in high school and the experience that I had in not these walls, but other walls that really drove me probably to where I am today. So many educators that were at CCHS really shaped who I've become today. I can name them. They probably won't be names you all recognize. Maybe Laurel Millette will recognize them and my husband, but not very many. But so, in high school, I was really inspired by my educators and their civic involvement and their encouragement of civic involvement. So when I moved back to Concord, that was where I sort of put my time and energy. I have been on the board at my children's nursery school, Milldam Nursery School, the board at Thoreau School, where my children were first starting out, the board at at Willard Elementary School, and now I am a parent representative at the PA. So again, I really have focused most of my civic engagement here in town on education on behalf of our students. And again, as someone who was inspired so much by my own education in Concord, it is the absolute least I can do giving back in service to our community.
Terrific. Thanks, Alexa. Sandeep?
You finished on cue. All right, so good evening, everyone. First of all, thank you to all of you for coming. It's not just us that are busy, all of you are busy too, so really appreciate you taking time out of your busy evenings and coming here to listen to us talk. So, my name is Sandeep Pishardi. I am a parent of two kids at Thoreau Elementary School, and I'm a firm believer in the power of public education. I'm the son of a teacher, and the value of education has been drilled into me right from the time I was a child. The role of the school committee, and this might come up in a little bit, is to make sure that every child, every student that goes to school in the district receives the highest quality education in a supportive and inclusive environment. And that means listening to all of the parents, all of the teachers, making data-driven decisions, and making sure that our schools are focused on preparing students, not just for tests, but for life. I want to share with you three principles that I want to center my campaign around. First is academic excellence and innovation. I'm a scientist myself. I work at MIT Lincoln Lab, where I solve technology for national security. And I know the importance of pushing boundaries. Our schools should foster curiosity, creativity, and critical thinking, which is very important in this increasingly complex and technology-driven world. Second, I have a commitment to belonging. I'm a first-generation immigrant myself, and I believe every child that goes to the school district here should feel like they're accepted for who they are and believe that the school district is enabling them to be the best that they can be. There is a third one, which is a
You have 10 seconds.
respect for collaboration, and I'm sure that'll come up in some of the answers somewhere.
Great, thanks, Sandeep. Michael?
I'm Michael Williams. I'm the child of Naomi and Solomon. My parents had a firm belief that a solid education gave you the key to the door to your future. I took that key, I opened the door to a career in medicine. Through my medical and surgical training, I met my wife. We began our family and we traveled all across the country, but we came back here to Massachusetts, to Concord, to raise and educate our children. Our kids are grown. They've gone through all stages of Concord Public Schools. Claire and I are retired now. Our schools served our children well, and it's given us the opportunity to look back. It's given me the chance to be active in the community. I've interacted with our school committee, I've interacted with our superintendent, and I've had the opportunity to see things that we do really well, but perhaps we could do just a little bit better. And it's focused my attention on three different areas: our students, our schools, and our community. For our students, I want educational excellence every day. What that means is we have students that come to us with a variety of different educational styles and needs. I want to look at those and give our educators, with the help of my colleagues, the tools they need to speak to them where they are so we can give them the support they need to achieve the challenges across the academic spectrum that they need to excel. I want to look at our good schools and again tweak them just a bit to make them better. We have performance gaps. I want to look at those performance gaps and again, working with my colleagues and with our administration, bring to our students what they need to make all groups excel. Finally, for our community, I want expressive, thoughtful, engaged leadership and thoughtful planning. I want to listen to you, bring what you have to our administration to help service all of our students, to make them better, proud, capable students stepping into a multicultural world. Educational excellence, communicating, making our good schools better, and communicating with you. That's what I offer. Thank you for the opportunity to bring this to you, and I hope I earn your vote.
Terrific. So we're going to start with questions that were submitted in advance. Some of these have been edited a little bit for clarity, but they're mostly as submitted. So the first question has to do with literacy programs. The superintendent recently stated that the school administration was vetting new evidence-based early literacy curricula and that the district would be moving away from using Lucy Calkins and other materials. What goals and expectations will you set for this process? How will you ensure widespread adoption of the selected new curriculum, and will you mandate that the old materials and methods no longer be used? We'll start with Lexa.
Sure. So we in Concord have the very fortunate position of having access to multiple curriculums. And some of those curriculums are evidence-based, as we just mentioned, and some have are very old established curriculums that have come under scrutiny in the recent years. So our process here at Concord Public Schools has been to examine those different curriculums and continue to look at ways in which to migrate to a suite of evidence-based curriculum. So that can't happen overnight. We have had discussions about this for years, and when you adopt new curriculum, it's not quite as simple as just running your credit card and buying a whole new suite of services and books and whatnot. It involves significant professional development training, so our teachers need to have the requisite amount of time to learn how to properly teach to the new curriculum so that our students can thrive, and we have been progressing incrementally in that direction for several years now, so that I believe in the coming fall, in the coming school year, you are going to see a wholesale adoption of a whole suite of evidence-based curriculums, which I think is really great progress, and it demonstrates how the fact that we are nimble, big institutions like ours, can't always move overnight, but we have looked at this, and you'll start to see those changes being implemented most significantly next fall.
Sandeep?
All right, so this is something I learned earlier today. More than a quarter of adults in this country read at a 6th grade level, right? So yes, we have been saddled with maybe curriculum that is not appropriate for far too long. Again, none of this is to say that things were horrible, right? Concord does much better than most places in this country. But this was to highlight that reading is tough. We have been looking at different curriculum to see what works. And this is an area where I welcome the opportunity to get smart. I don't know everything. I will rely on the experts in this area, try and find out what they know and where we need to adjust, where we need to tweak. One thing is clear, right? We are not where we need to be in this district. If you compare it to neighboring towns, as well as if you compare it to countries around the globe. There is a lot of change that needs to be made. But Alexa brings up a lot of great points. One is this is not adoption that can happen overnight. This is adoption that we need to have a pathway to getting there. We need to make sure that any kind of change we make is going to be benchmarked against what exists in other places, make sure we're on the right track, and if we're not on the right track, we need to tweak. This is, again, not an area where you can get results after 1 year. It might be a multi-year thing. And I know that's frustrating when we have children in the schools, right? We want what's the best, what's the state of the art for our kids, and for anyone to say that this is going to be a 2, 3, 4 year process to kind of identify what's best is frustrating. I get that. I, again, welcome the opportunity to learn more on how to better address this. I feel like we are doing an admirable job where we are in trying to get better.
Michael?
So we do have room for progress, and it's good that we're adopting an evidence-based curriculum that, from what I read from the K through 5 program, is going to be fully implemented around 2027. As we stand now, 62% of our 3rd graders are reading with proficiency. 71% of our 8th graders. If we look at subgroups in that, those subgroups are performing with proficiency somewhat less. So I think it's be hard-pressed to have any of us say that we are not in favor of evidence-based teaching methods, and we all are, because we want to be efficient and effective school committee members. We need to give our educators the professional development and also the time to implement the programs and then benchmark. And that's something that we would do at the level of the school committee. We'd benchmark to make certain that the parameters, those proficiency numbers that I spoke to, improved over time. So we'd look at that, and just as Sandeep said, from time to time we'd have to tweak to make certain the plan that we've put in place, the evidence-based educational tools that we've provided for our educators and the time we've given them for professional development will work to move our parameters in the right direction. And if they don't, we keep working with it until we reach success. But it's an ever sort of continuous quality improvement, and we'll look for that. And at the school committee level, we would benchmark for that and test that.
Terrific. So our next question is about special education and inclusion, and we'll start with Sandeep. As our district works to keep students on IEPs in district, true inclusion goes beyond placement. It requires meaningful integration. How do you define an integrated classroom experience for students with disabilities? And what steps would you take to ensure they receive the support they need to thrive academically and socially in and out of the classroom?
Right. That again is a very tough question. Concord, by all accounts, does a fairly good job with special ed. Now, if you have a child that has special needs, that needs an IEP, we would hope that the teachers, the administrators are doing what is best for the child. I've spoken to multiple special ed parents that feel maybe that is not happening today. So this is maybe an area where there is room for improvement, right? But the problem's a little deeper than that. When we are trying to manage the spending that we have at the schools, a lot of us say we need to make data-driven decisions, right? This is an area where data-driven decision is not going to work, right? We want to make sure that each child is allotted the care that they need, is allotted the resources that they need to succeed. And it might come at the cost of certain other priorities for the district. These are tough decisions that the school committee, that the administration needs to make. And you know, I don't think there is a silver bullet that solves all of this. These are tough problems that require us to look at the situation and make decisions with empathy. Thank you.
Inclusion and integration are things that I'm pretty well attuned to, and I think that there are three ingredients in an educational system and the interaction that happens in the classroom that all parents want for all their children. High expectations, high quality materials, but in that probably the most important thing is high quality support, the contact from teacher to student that says these things. I have these materials for you. I have expectations that you will be able to achieve with them, and you're going to be able to do that because I will be with you to help you through. Now, we need to make certain that we give our educators the time to develop the protocol, the time to implement the protocol, but most importantly, the opportunity to develop that. In medicine, you'd call it the laying on of hands. The laying on of hands in the art of education that brings all students and lifts all students. And when those three things are provided, there's evidence-based to show that makes all comers improve. Now, in addition, that extends not just the classroom, it extends out in the playground. Everything should be set so that there's not only accessibility, but inclusion. And we do that across the board. And again, that's something that our educators have the time, that we have to make sure that our education have the time and the support to deliver that in the classroom and out.
Sure, so inclusion can mean so many different things, and I think that in order for kids to truly feel included and that they belong in a classroom, it really does hinge on the proper professional development for our educators. Our educators need to have the practices that are necessary to differentiate in a classroom, so that they can reach both really high achieving kids and kids that are struggling. We also need to ensure that our caseload ratios are at the right and proper balance so that kids who need help, whether it's in literacy, reading, math, or STEM, have a person in that classroom that is able to work with them. This year, in fact, we noticed that so many kids who were having learning disabilities, specifically post-COVID, had rebounded with test scores and the way we benchmark things with our STAR exams at the beginning, middle, and end of the year. We have seen evidence that kids have improved enough that we were actually able to reduce some of the ratios of students to teachers with respect to special ed, so I think that's progress. We are always evaluating so that the kids have the right balance and the right instruction, and I think that's where you're going to start to ensure that kids really feel like they're in the classroom with their friends, but getting the proper one-on-one attention they might need.
So our next question was actually the most popular question submitted from the PTGs, and it's about cell phone usage at schools. What is your position on the phone-free school movement and a strict bell-to-bell, no cell phone policy being implemented across all schools in Concord?
I'm certainly in favor of that because I think the evidence shows that access to digital devices over the course of the day have a disrupting effect on our students. Access to the associated social media also has a deleterious effect on our students, so I'd certainly be in favor of that. I know that it's been talked about at the school committee policy subcommittee level, and something I expect to see coming up on the agenda in the school committee's meetings in the future. I know that there's local and regional Massachusetts cell phone policy, a grassroots group that's gotten up, and I know that there are local members here that are certainly supporting that, and I believe they spoke up in the policy meeting during public comment meetings. So it's something I'm certainly in favor of. I think it needs to be looked at, and we don't need to invent it on our own. There are some locales that have started to implement a program. We need to also work with our educators to help understand how it fits into their workload in their day so that it doesn't detract from education. We also have to be mindful of the students, the type 1 diabetics that are using their phones to monitor their sugars, and the English learners that are using their devices to help translate. So a mindful, thoughtful policy needs to be implemented, needs to be developed and implemented, but I think we can be curious and enough and broad enough to look at other areas that are implementing things, take the best practices, bring them here, and work with them and implement them here.
Alexa?
So in 2010, the iPhone became the most ubiquitous device in the nation, and specifically in communities like ours. What you also see happening in 2010 is a precipitous rise in depression and anxiety among middle school and high school students. Girls at a higher rate than boys. I think social media has a direct effect on that. And it's been interesting, in the early days of parents becoming keen on reducing screen time, a lot of researchers weren't willing to say that the ubiquity of the iPhone was causal in the increase in anxiety and depression. And I think we're finally seeing, specifically with Jonathan Haidt at NYU, strong evidence that it in fact isn't just correlational, it is causal. To that end, I do support bell-to-bell policies here, with obviously significant exceptions for children who use the phone for like a medical device. Diabetes patients rely on their phones now. So, with the proper carve-outs, I do think that our mental health among our kids is a crisis, and I do think it is imperative that all aspects of our community, parents, schools, all need to be a part of a comprehensive community solution. And I think that should start now.
All right, I'll start with the short answer. Yes, I'm entirely in favor of having a bell-to-bell restriction on the use of cell phones in the buildings. But I think both Michael and Alexa have pointed out, right, this is something we agree on in principle. The nuances of that policy need to be ironed out. We want to make sure that we provide exceptions where needed, whether it's for medical, whether it's for inclusivity reasons. And we also want to make sure that the burden of enforcement doesn't fall on the educators. They already have a lot on their plate, right? The last thing we want to do is have them police the use of cell phones in school as well. So the nuances of that policy need to be ironed out, but entirely in favor of it. Now, I think, Alexa, you touched upon, right? It's not just the phones. It's social media, right? That's a much bigger part of the rising anxiety and mental health challenges in our teens, and that requires not just the school bell-to-bell policy. It requires engagement from the community. We want to make sure the same kind of restrictions or whatever we put in place in schools, kind of there is buy-in in the community, because otherwise you're just, instead of maybe being exposed to the phones 16 hours a day, now you're exposed to phones 8 hours a day, right? You really have to ask whether that's or social media, I guess, whether that is going to be the difference that you're looking for. The one last thing I want to point out is that there have been countries around the globe that have, and localities that have implemented versions of this. We can learn from that, and we can be the example that the state legislature uses. And as and when policy from the state comes out, we can tweak what we have. But I hope that with the work that the committee will do, it'll be a solid policy that will be enforceable.
Okay. The next question relates to the achievement gap. What concrete steps will you take as a member of the school committee to address the troubling achievement gap in our schools, particularly for low-income students, students of color, and students with disabilities?
Sure. One anecdote that I think is really demonstrative of how we are working to close the achievement gap is actually one at our high school. So last year, for the first time, we embedded honors and standard, I guess, English classes in the high school. And what that did was it made our classrooms heterogeneous. So you had kids at all levels in one classroom. And we do give our teachers tools to be able to differentiate instruction so that all kids are met sort of where they are when looking at a certain text in each different grade level. And what was interesting was we saw immediately in just 1 year a significant increase in MCAS scores among our 10th grade students who had traditionally been lower achieving. So I think the practices that we need to employ are, again, I go back to professional development and instruction so that our teachers are given the tools they need to address and meet kids exactly where they are academically. We've proven this year that we can do that here at the high school. And I don't have enough time, but another, I think, big thing is going back to early literacy, ensuring and investing in our absolute youngest readers, because in K-2, you might learn to read, but after grade 3, you are reading to learn. And if you are behind, it has deleterious effects, not just in your humanities and English, but also in the STEM work that you do, because kids are really taught to explain their work verbally and comprehensively. So those two ways, I think, are working.
Again, this is a great question. Looking at the demographics of the students in our schools, we have a noticeable percentage of students who are of color, and I've written down 27% here. I think that's of last year. We have quite a gap between the number of students of color and educators of color. That difference, that disparity between the students and educators of color, I think plays a non-negligible part in the achievement gaps. Yes, the MCAS scores, the number of AP tests taken by students of color are all noticeably lower than those of white kids, right? Part of the thing we need to do is, again, as was pointed out, we need to make sure that we're investing enough resources to meet them where they are, the children, give them the support that they need. And any kind of, I go back to this, right, because the budget is a big stressor. We need to make sure that any kind of budget decisions we make are as far away from that as possible, so we can close the gap between the students that are not achieving at the level that we want them to, and help give them that platform that they need so they can succeed in life as adults.
So it's heartening. It's good to know that we, in the level that you described, that we have 1 year of good data. I'd want to see how that data team plays out over several years, because as we've established earlier, things aren't going to change overnight. I went to private schools from 3rd grade to 12th, and then went to MIT, and I can tell you, it's not the color of the teacher, it's what the teacher has, and how that teacher can, again, the laying on of hands, that contact from student to teacher, and saying, I'm going to be on this journey with you. You got to have the perfect tools. You have to have the professional development and the time so that that instructor can implement it. And at our level in the school committee, that's what we'd be doing, making certain that the professional development time, the implementation time is there, and the detection skills are given to the instructors, so that we, and we do that from a 30,000-foot level, just making certain that we see that things are benchmarked year to year to year, and make certain that our policy and budgets direct that so that our educators have that time. I think it's something that we'd have to look at, and I think all of you are aware of the Globe articles looking at Newton's experience with de-leveling, and the big fallout from that is that you need to make certain that the educators, the people on the front end, on the front lines, have the time, have the tools, and have the abilities to make that difference in the laying on of hands. At the school committee level, we'd be doing that, but we would and should and need to also benchmark to make certain that the 1 year improvements are also stable, year 2, year 3, and if not, that we make changes in policy to make those incremental gains durable and persist.
So this was another frequently submitted question, which is kind of the counterpart to what we just discussed. Massachusetts is one of the few states without robust, gifted, and talented educational programming. In recent years, our district has moved away from leveled academics, as we just discussed. Would you be willing to support reintroducing or expanding advanced learning opportunities to meet the academic needs of our advanced learners?
To me?
Sorry, I lost track of who I
I think,
said. I think
okay.
Take it away.
So we've had, I see some parents in the room with whom I've already had this discussion. You know, I'm not opposed to introducing a gifted program or anything that would cater to students, because, you know, we really do want this district to be able to cater to every child. Just as we meet some kids with special ed, we need to be able to meet the kids that are gifted where they are. Now, it all goes back to what I said a couple of minutes ago, right? It's the budget. When you have to make tough decisions on where you want to provide services, my bias would lead me to offering those for special ed, and instead of offering it for maybe a gifted program. Now, that being said, if there is any public-private partnership that might bring in resources to have such a gifted program in the school, I would more than happily advocate for that.
So we are a public school, so we have to deliver the services to everybody that comes to our school to meet them where they are, as I said early in my open, give them the support they need to achieve, but give them the challenge they need to excel. It's a hard job. It's a hard task. What we need to do at our level is make certain that we, in our policy and our planning and our review of the budget, make certain that we give to our educators, direct to our educators, the resources and the time so they can have the tools to select the students, identify the students, and teach them at their level. I don't know that, with the exception of Alexa, I don't, either of us, since we don't see the line items, we haven't seen that, but we need to manage our dollars so that we speak to all of our students, because that's the charge of a public school, to educate, lift, and elevate all of our students so that at the end of the line, when they graduate with their document, that they are capable, proud, and able to move into a multicultural world and able to succeed. So I don't think it's necessarily at this point robbing Peter to pay Paul, but it's understanding how we get, how we lift the boats for everybody. And there are tools that allow us to do that. I'm done. Yeah, I'm done. We can talk about the tools later, and I'm glad to.
Sure. We good? You're done?
I'm done.
Okay,
I'm
okay,
done.
okay. It's confusing. Sorry about that. So this is a complicated one for all the reasons that both Michael and Sandeep have discussed. If you live in Concord, which you all do, you will notice that we have exploding costs here in town, and that includes, our school budgets, which make up 66% of the town budget. So what we look to at the school committee, although it's not quite in our purview, but we rely on the administration, I think this is a wonderful opportunity when you want to look at public-private partnerships. So some things that we've done specifically at the high school level, we have access to AP classes that are not taught in the high school. Students can take AP courses and more advanced coursework at private institutions in the Commonwealth, a lot of college-level classes. We have other opportunities as well. I'm trying to think, I can't think of them all off the top of my head. And I think because we do need to keep our budgets appropriate, we need to look at ways to partner and expand those partnerships that we have already. Because I think our most motivated students are going to be able to engage at the college level and thrive there in ways that are going to benefit them more. And so I fully support expanding those opportunities at the high school, and we'll continue to look into making that more robust.
Okay, this will be the last question that I have from the stage, and then we'll move to audience questions. So get your questioning, thinking caps on. So the final question, we'll start with you, Michael, is how would you describe the relationship between the school committee and the select board today? What is working well, and what, if anything, would you like to see change?
So I think we are seeing a different relationship between the school committee and select board this year as compared to what we saw last year. And I think it's something, when I mentioned engage responsive leadership with thoughtful planning, we need to look at how we communicate among ourselves and the school committee, communicating between our administration and our community community and the administration, and our school committee and all of our municipal bodies, because we're all playing with the money that's coming out of each of our pockets. And just as we teach our children not to run with scissors, to color within the lines and play nicely with others, there are other parts of our municipal system that are dipping from the same pot. We need to make certain that we're mindful of that and that we are in conversation constantly about what we can take. And what we're lobbying to be part of is 60% of our municipal budget. So I think it's prudent, not only prudent but necessary, that we all talk with each other and figure out how we're going to divide this pie so everybody may not get everything they need, but get what they need to support our community, because in the final analysis, we're all pulling for the same thing. We want this for the betterment of our students, for the betterment of our community, and to make a Concord that works for all.
So presently, the main way that the school committee intersects with the select board is through our capital planning process. Capital planning are the big projects that we schedule for our long range planning in town. So it's imperative, so that we don't take on too much debt at the same time, that those projects are properly spaced out and timed appropriately. However, Concord is at this interesting intersection where we have these exceptional opportunities in front of us, whether it's the MCI property, the land on the Peabody campus, or 229 Main Street. So capital, I think, is going to become a far larger aspect of the work that both committees are going to be tasked with, planning for the use of those spaces. So to me, I think I want to see representation from the school committee and the select board on all of the different committees that are going to intersect with the planning of those three spaces, because they all might impact the schools. For example, if we build a certain amount of housing, that the town, for example, needs to know at what population increase or enrollment increase at the schools are we going to trigger new buildings. We don't want to do any more of that. I think the appetite for new buildings in town it has come and gone. So I think it's ways in which where we really need to work together and come together to problem solve, so that we take the best opportunities in front of us and plan them appropriately and properly in a way that's going to make Concord thrive for the next 250 years.
I think the fact that the question is being asked is a testament to the fact that maybe things are not where it should be. Yes, there is the school committee and the select board working together more now than in the past, but for far too long, I think the decision making has been in silos, where the select board, sorry guys, I know you guys are sitting right there, make decisions for the 30-40% of what the town budget is, and the school committee does their thing over at Ripley. That's not really great, right? Because we do share the same pot of money. You can say it's not Robin, Peter to pay Paul, but it is a zero-sum game. We have only fixed number of dollars. And we want to make sure that the decisions that are being made are more holistic in nature, that they fit within the vision of what we want the town to be. And that requires more and more and more cooperation. Alexa mentioned all the new property that is going to be available to us. We need more affordable housing. That is a fact. Now, the school committee having a seat at the table to have those discussions to understand how those might impact them downstream is also just as important. So, again, this is not meant to sound like a dig at what's happening right now. Things are on the right trajectory. I think there needs to be more integration and more communication between the select board and the school committee.
Okay, so we are ready for questions from the audience. If anyone's interested, you can step up to the microphone there. There's a PTG member who will help you if you need to probably turn it on. If you'd start by introducing yourself, and remember all questions should be addressed to the full panel, not a specific candidate. So
Hi.
You have the floor.
Hi, I'm Karin Hodges. I'm at 230 Harrington Avenue, if that matters. Citizen. So there's a lot of, with social media, I've noticed there's a lot of pseudoscience, a lot of knowledge gaps, not just amongst the kids, but also amongst the adults, right? People are just trying to understand things often in the community. If you're in a situation where maybe even a superintendent or one of your other colleagues in the group has been sort of subjected to some form of pseudoscience or a knowledge gap. For example, sometimes people think that special education and giftedness are mutually exclusive, for example. How would you work with your colleagues to help them understand something, and how do you manage the conflicts or the tension surrounding those things, like the cognitive dissonance that people might feel? So I guess I'm asking a process question. How do you go about working with colleagues when you see things differently? How do you work with the superintendent when you see things differently?
Sure. So we are very fortunate. We're really fortunate to have a tremendous professional staff at the district. So we have a woman named Shelley Chin right now who is our Assistant Superintendent of Curriculum and Learning. We have Angel Charles, who is our Director of Student Services, which oversees special education. Both of those women are really, really successful in their fields. They receive incredible amounts of access to research and data, not just from the Department of Education here in Massachusetts, but also at different conferences and that we send them to, so that they're meeting with their sort of professional peers to share best practices. So, again, I think conflict in any committee work is inherent. You're going to have 5 or 7 different members on the school committee, whether we're meeting regionally or just in K through 8. So, I always encourage respectful discourse. We have to listen to each other, but at the end of the day, we do need to rely on research, data, and facts. And if you come to our meetings, which tend to get long and tend to get boring, you will see that we do that. We look at the data, we isolate our problems that we have, and then we confront them head on. And I think some examples of that have been our CMS math curriculum, our early literacy adoption. So I think we always have to listen, and we have to rely on our professionals to use their resources to get the appropriate data for us to discuss.
All right, so I kind of lost track of the question. I know it started with misinformation, and I latched onto that because that's what I do in my day job is how does the nation fight misinformation? Short answer, we don't know yet. So Karan, that's really hard to do, right? But this is the line I keep telling people, right? The thing about science is whether you like it or not, it's true, right? So as long as you have evidence to back up what you're showing, science will speak for itself. Now, if there are ways you might be able to parse certain information to project your views or present certain agendas, I think that's where the difference in experience from the committee comes in, right? Everybody on the committee will have a different lived experience. They bring different perspectives, and that's where that engagement and that dissent, the constructive dissent, needs to happen. It needs to be, here's why I think you're looking at this data incorrectly, or maybe here's why you're not looking at the data completely, or maybe this is what I get when I look at that data, right? And that discussion needs to happen. That collaboration needs to happen. And it's not necessarily to say that somebody else is wrong. It's to point out that this is a different perspective. And again, in the end, it's not an executive role, right? It is a committee job. So you do need to use your power of influence to convince others across the table or sitting around the table that that is the right path forward. And if the superintendent or the administration is not on board, then again, you have to persuade. There's this book I was reading, I think it was Jocelyn Davis maybe. It's called Art of Quiet Influence, I believe. Don't quote me on that. Maybe you'll have to look it up. Haven't read a lot of books these last few months. But that's one way you can use data. You can, without being in your face, show them where you're coming from and maybe persuade them.
Data doesn't lie, but you can lie with the data. And I guess what I would think different from the general population, the 5, 7 people that sit on the school committee, part of our job, part of our charge is to be informed, to be knowledgeable, I think a lot of us have found that as we're working to get this gig, we've had to learn the salient points of education for educators, because none of us are. So we're informed. We come with best intentions because to get anywhere in our professional lives, we've had to be able to work with others, collaborate, influence, and build coalitions. So being informed, knowledgeable about the topic, and then using our skills, our communicative and collaborative skills to look at the data that we're informed about and have not necessarily conflict, but differing perspective, differing ideas, that roiling back and forth will make for better decisions that will best service our students, best service our community, and again, help us to build a system that educates all.
Another question from the audience? Please come down to the microphone so everyone can hear you. If you could introduce yourself, that would be great.
Hi, can you all hear me? Subbu Venkatraman, Black Horse Place, trying to be an informed citizen.
I'm not sure that's on. Is the mic? Or speak closer.
Eat the mic.
Can you hear me now? Yes. Can you hear me now? Yeah. Okay, you can. All right, Subbu Venkatraman, Black Horse Place, parent of 2 kids, so trying to be an informed citizen. Before I ask my question, I'll keep it short so you won't forget it. Thank you to all 3 of you for setting aside your time and energy. I know it takes a lot. What do you envision the role of the school committee as it relates to the 3 most important stakeholders, us parents, the students, and the administrators?
All right. Thank you, Subbu. So the role of the school committee with regard to the administration is fairly simple, right? The charter requires you to act kind of in a supervisory capacity with them, with the administration. It is to make sure that the job that is being done is actually serving all of the students, and as we shared with multiple answers, it's to make sure that different perspectives are heard, and it's to make sure that the product that is coming out of the school system, which is the kids, are being served as best as they should be. The second part is with regards to the community, right? That was the second one?
The stakeholders.
Stakeholders, yeah.
Yeah.
The community, every individual, whether or not they have kids, pay taxes. They have a voice. I believe the school committee should serve as a conduit of information from the community to the administration and vice versa. I think the administration has done a great job of sharing updates with the parents, and I think that's a thing or two that the committee can learn from the administration is how do we share and inform the community about what the issues are that are happening, or what the short-term issues are, what the long-term issues are, and how we plan on addressing them, and solicit feedback. And the third one was students. I think that's the core part of it, right? Your job centers around making sure that every child in the school district, whether they're from Concord, whether they're from Boston, whether they're from Carlisle, make sure that they are given the resources they need to be the best version of themselves. I'll stop there.
I guess I would agree. I think the Massachusetts Association of School Committees sort of lays down what our responsibilities are. They're looking at policy, reviewing the budget, supervising by benchmarking and studying the superintendent, assistant superintendent of teaching and learning, and being always mindful that we're a conduit for information from the administration to the community, but most importantly, from the community to the administration. We are always mindful that the constituents of the school committee is not just the schools. We provide guidance for and set theme for the schools. The constituents are all of you, all of us. So we need to be mindful. We need to listen to what we're being asked, listen to sometimes what we're being told. We need to digest that, formulate a plan, and work so that the organ that we are responsible for teaches all of our students, elevates all of our students, and makes them eloquent, able, and competent citizens. So that's our job, but we do that by listening to you, formulating decision, working across the school committee to give an end result for our students.
So the first part of your question was talking about the relationship between the school committee and the superintendent. So our relationship is supervisory for certain. So what does that mean and what does that look like? It means that each year the superintendent, in collaboration with the school committee, sets a set of goals. And we hold the superintendent accountable to those goals every year. We provide her with a formal review every 2 years. We renew her contract. And so that's sort of the primary way. Then the second thing is the superintendent will come to us with a recommended budget each year for our annual operating expenses. It's our job to review that budget and ensure that it's meeting the goals that we're setting as a district, that it's a proper stewardship of all of our collective financial resources, and I think thirdly that it's reflecting the values of our community. So that is sort of the first piece. The second piece with the sort of the community at large, I feel like our job is just to sort of take input. There are 3 types of meetings that you can have as a school committee. You can have business meetings, which we have every other week. You can have workshops, which focus on one sort of topic. And the third, you can have our forums. And forums are designed specifically to engage with stakeholders to solicit information from the community members. So we specifically do those when there are topics of high interest. You'll probably see a forum about cell phones in your not too distant future. And then finally with our students are the lens through which we see everything. Our budget, our evaluation of the superintendent, and just sort of how we execute our dollars every year to ensure that our students are put first, so that their academic achievement and their mental wellness is front and center.
Okay, we've got time for one last question.
Thank you, and thanks again for what all 3 of you do.
So we have time for one last question from the audience, and to keep us on schedule, I'm going to limit you guys to 1 minute in response. I know, it's cruel and unusual, but we're trying to stay on time. So, floor is yours.
I'm Joanne Toronto of Crabtree Road. Thank you for the 3 of you for learning the nitty-gritties of all of this and running to represent our schools. One of the questions that I've been thinking about over the past few weeks is a little bit about, Subu touched on this a little bit, the forums that you have for the school committee. When you're a parent of really young children, I'm just starting to come out of the fog of really, really little kids. And I'm starting to become more aware. I'm getting more involved in the school. And I think that there is a disconnect between the school committee and the families with young children, because I think that your meetings are held at times that are bedtime and bath time, and we can't attend them. And I'm wondering if and the 3 of you can answer however you see fit.
do you see another methodology to reach out to the constituents and make that connection with the families that are not able to do the evening activities?
Michael, you're up first.
Yeah,
Yes.
sure. It was my, oh, sorry, I'm so sorry.
Yes, and certainly, we've been doing this the past 10 weeks. We've been sitting in Club Car Cafe, we've been sitting in the library. It's clear, I've heard this from parents that and again, our kids are out of school, but I've heard from parents that, it's really hard to get misses from the superintendent, get misses from the principal, get misses from the youth groups, and no one's telling you what's really the important stuff. So why don't you, school committee's got 2 members that are sitting at Club Car Cafe at a time that's convenient, or we can send a podcast out. This is what your school committee has done. If you're interested, send us a letter, send us an email, and we'll make certain that get back to the people that makes the decisions. So there are other ways for us to push out information so it make it easier for you to know what's going on with your schools and to participate in the dialogue. Yes, there are other ways we can do it.
Excellent.
Sure. We struggle with this. And so a couple years ago, when I was chair, we set out to have 6 community coffees that were 3 in the daytime in each of our communities of Concord, Carlisle, and Boston, 3 in the evening, so that we were, hopeful about reaching as many people as possible in those 3 communities. And sadly, they weren't well attended. We've done it this year as well. We're only doing 3 this year because of poor attendance. And so I think another way that we're trying to engage with parents is through something called the story of the school. So we are going to create an annual document that sort of gives parents a broad perspective of what's happening at the district, are the achievements that have gone all K through 12, and so that people who can engage with us monthly do see that big picture. Again, you'll get emails from the superintendent every week. You'll get emails from the building-based principals every month or so. And the other thing I always encourage people to do, anyone who knows me, send us an email. I think it's the best way to learn from the community what is on your mind. When
Final thought.
that is sometimes what?
Final thought.
Oh, shoot. And again, just as Abby sort of created like pockets of the types of questions, we'll do that. When we start to see an influx of emails that are sort of all coalescing around the same issue, we'll end up putting it on an agenda.
Okay, Sandeep?
Joanne, thank you for that question. This is something we all struggle with, right? For the last few months, I've been listening to school committee meetings while driving my daughter to ballet, and she's like, what are you listening to? Let's listen to some music. Like, this is more fun, right? No,
It's not more fun, it's harder work.
but seriously, it's tough. Many of us have day jobs, right? So we can't necessarily have these meetings during the day. So it's hard. Now, that being said, just like we spoke about meeting students where they are, we need to meet constituents where they are. The cafes, the meet and greets that you've tried to, not the meet and greets, I guess it is meet and greets, right?
Yeah.
At the cafes where you welcome people is a great place to start. We have an FM place down here, right? At the high school.
Down there.
Yeah. Why not use that, right? On your drive-in to work Monday morning, maybe you hear about what the school committee's done, what the select board's doing, and you get updates. But apparently only high school students can do that, so maybe we need to rope somebody else in to give those updates. But yeah, meet people where they are. We need to expand what we do.
So I
Okay.
just have one
No,
quick thing.
we do not have time. Sorry. Nope, sorry. I gotta cut you off. I want to thank all 3 of the school committee candidates for their time this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
We're going to take like a 2-minute turnaround to get our select board candidates up on stage, and we will be right back with you. So we'll be quick as we can. Okay, we're going to get started. So thank you for staying for the second half of our program, which is with tonight's our select board candidates. So we'll start with the same format. Each candidate will have 2 minutes to briefly introduce themselves. Then we'll get right into questions. We had questions submitted in advance. We'll also have some time for questions at the microphone. As you saw with the first half of the program, it moves pretty quickly. We don't have a ton of time for lots of questions, so we'll try to keep our answers snappy. And if you have time to ask a question from the audience, I would really strongly urge you to keep it very, very brief and direct. And we'll do the same thing. We'll rotate who answers the question first, and we'll be starting with Elizabeth. So she's going to start with her introduction right now.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for staying for the select board part of this. My name is Elizabeth Akehurst Moore. This is my first time running for anything, and I have to say something that I didn't know was how bored I'd get about talking about myself, but I will give you a brief autobiography because it does bear on why I think you should vote for me. I grew up in Lincoln. I went to Concord Academy, moved away for college, for graduate school, came back to the area for law school, worked downtown at law firm for as long as I could deal with it, which was a few years, and came out here and opened Trails End Cafe in 2011. And then I opened Concord Market in 2018. So I first started serving on committees in 2014. I was on the Town Governance Committee. I've served 2 terms on the Zoning Board of Appeals, and I am currently on the MCI Advisory Committee, where I serve as the chair of the Legal and Government Affairs Subcommittee. And last but definitely not least, I have 4 children, 2, a 5-year-old and an 8-year-old at Willard, and I have twin 14-year-olds, one at the middle school and one at Fenn. So why am I running? I am as deeply entrenched in this community as I could possibly be on pretty much every front. With my kids, my businesses, I always say I've been through every permitting process in town, and my committee work. So, and I think my legal background has helped that. All of my experience on the committees have really led me to the point where I think this is the right time for me, and that's why I'm running for Select Board. So thank you.
Thank you, Paul Bohm. I've lived in Concord for 48 years, and I was drawn here by its rich history and its outstanding schools, and the schools are even more outstanding today. Education has always been a central part of my family life. I came from a family of teachers, including my father, my mother, my sister, my brother-in-law, my niece, and my daughter-in-law. So I know firsthand that teaching is one of the hardest and most valuable jobs, maybe only second to parenting, in shaping the future of our community and our children. And we must invest in the future, but invest wisely. My commitment and my family's commitment to Concord schools is very personal and enduring. My 3 children went to Concord Public Schools, and now 5 of my grandchildren are benefiting from the same educational foundation. My daughter Adrian and my son-in-law John are on the PTG board at Thoreau. Through my 18 years of town service and multiple committees, I've worked hard to support our schools. On the Community Preservation Committee, I directly and personally helped to allocate about $700,000 in funding to the Concord Middle School fields and the Thoreau Elementary School fields. And I'm also fully supportive of the CCHS amenities building. On the Recreation Commission, I fostered collaboration with the school department, and I've assisted in the process of replacement of the Doug White playing fields. Now, as a Select Board member, while I respect the distinct roles and responsibilities and lines of authority of the school committee and the Select Board, I will encourage the Select Board to have active, regular communications and coordination with the school committee. I recently sat down with Dr. Hunter, and she agreed with the potential benefits of such open collaboration. So my promise is simple: to move forward and leave the past behind, to foster a more constructive, supportive, and active relationship between the Select Board and the school committee, certainly on budgets, but beyond budgets and many other aspects of our life. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Mary Hartman. Oops. I'm quiet. How's that? Okay, good. Hi, everyone. I'm Mary Hartman. I think I'm the only candidate in front of you tonight whose kids haven't benefited from Concord's excellent schools. I raised my kids in Harvard, Mass. But let me assure you that I do remember what it's like to be a busy parent with school-aged children. As a senior finance manager for a large multinational corporation, I distinctly remember raising my kids while holding down a high-powered job. I remember worrying about their future, their friends, and their health. I was so busy that I often didn't attend town meeting, and I cared deeply about the issues that were happening in town. I didn't have time to fully understand the issues, so I commend you for being here tonight to understand the issues and to learn more about the candidates. As the current chair of the Select Board and a former chair of the Finance Committee, I have a good understanding of how these boards work best together. We are independent boards with different priorities. We communicate and respect each other's authority. This year, I hosted 3 joint meetings between the FinCom, the Select Board, and the School Committee to discuss spending, as you heard Alexa mention earlier. I believe this contributed to our coming into town meeting this year in agreement on the guideline, as opposed to what happened last year when we came in at odds about the guideline. So we're making good progress towards working collaboratively on budget issues. I want to distinguish the school committee from the select board for a minute. The school committee focuses on the schools, and they go deep. The select board looks really broad. We have purview over 65 boards and committees that impact all residents. Everything from recreation, the library, parks, housing, sustainability, transportation, bicycle and pedestrian safety, infrastructure, and it goes on and on and on. The job is complex. It requires strong financial expertise, good judgment, the ability to bring people together, and the right temperament. Right now on the select board, we
We've got to
have very little.
wrap up your statement.
Am I out of town?
You're-
Oh, I
yep.
didn't even watch you. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm done. I'll answer questions. I'm done. Sorry.
We'll make him wave more forcefully from here on
You gotta
out.
go like that.
Joe?
Watching you.
Watch him.
Hi, everyone. I'm Joe Lauren. Thank you for being here. You know, my guess is you're here because you love this town and you love our schools. But you also think that we have some challenges and maybe even some opportunities. And so I would say, yes, me too. That's why I'm here. Let me just say a couple things about me and maybe why I think they're important or relevant. One thing is that, so my wife and I have we've been here 15 years, raised our sons here. They went to the public schools. One of my best stories is that, and they're both at private colleges here in New England in STEM programs. They both said that after their freshman year, that their physics and calculus was basically a repeat of their senior year at CCHS. And I thought, oh my God, what better testament to the great schools we have, right? Great investment. I wish I could have saved that on the college side of things. The other thing I want you to know is I've done a lot of work here, volunteer work, invested in everything, you know, the Cub Scouts and youth sports, but also a lot in education, both scholarship fund of Concord and Carlisle, but also more broadly, I've been on the board of an organization called Tenacity. I've been a volunteer at Boston Partners for Education, doing reading to middle schoolers and talking about how important that is. So my only point is, I really care about education. I really love this town and we're invested. The other thing in my 30 seconds is that I'm also an engineer. And to me, that means that I understand the power of data analysis and facts in helping understand what's going on and driving to solutions. But I also understand that there is such a thing as analysis paralysis, and sometimes we need to weigh the differing opinions, weigh the pros and cons, but then get along with a decision. And I would say, for example, our cell phone service is probably one of those things.
Okay, so these are questions that were submitted in advance. You'll see some greatest hits here tonight that you've probably answered at other forums. But many come through the lens of parents, obviously, because they're from PTG members. So the first question we have is about town meeting. Young families often struggle to attend town meeting and are essentially disenfranchised. Do you support fully remote participation at town meeting?
So I mentioned that my first committee work was in 2014, and I was the youngest person on the committee by a lot at that time. And we talked about this, and I said, hey, what's up with town meeting? Is this something that we could maybe have remote participation in? And that wasn't necessarily looked on favorably by some of the people on the committee, including the former town moderator, but I absolutely am in favor of it. My feeling, I've heard a lot, well, you have to be in the room. If you're not in the room, you can't hear the conversations, you don't know what's going on. I don't necessarily buy that. I think you can be in the room and asleep, you can be at home with 20 browsers open looking up different things. I think if we're really serious about democracy, meaning including everyone, then make it easier for people to participate in democracy. So I am fully in support of it, and I know that there's a warrant article asking us to go to the state to ask for approval for it, and I think it is fantastic and will only lead to more participation. And as someone with kids, I definitely understand the struggles of getting out for not just one, not just two, but 3 nights. So that's my opinion.
Yeah, thank you. I think reforming town meeting is a long time coming. It's a treasured institute, and in fact, Simon Cataldo reminded us the other night that the revolution really started when the British authorities abolished town meeting. Really, it's true. I forgot the name of the act. So it's a cherished institution in town.
Yeah.
It has evolved over time, but still, we are only represented at that meeting by a handful of people, 10% at the most. So it needs reform. So I am in favor of multiple ways of tackling this. I think there's one way, the use of clickers. That doesn't get a lot more people there, but it's a start in gathering data. I think remote participation is on the town warrant for a home rule petition. There are other communities that want to do this. I think we have the technology to do this, and we ought to do it. There are other mechanisms as well. Like this auditorium is one of the hybrid centers during town meeting. At the new Concord Middle School, we have another big auditorium. So we have the technology to expand the number of people in different parts of town that attend. That has to be a major goal of ours, because I'm a big fan of something called community sustainability, and one of the tenets of community sustainability is civic participation and inclusion. And we can only get civic participation of young families who are not well represented at that meeting by having multiple ways of attending. I think that's really important for us to expand the participation to at least 20% of the population. That may be a low bar, but I think there'll be a big increase, and we have multiple ways of doing it. So yes, I'm in favor of remote participation, but we have multiple ways of skinning this cat even before that home rule petition is approved, and that's going to take a few years.
Yeah. Okay, good. Yes, I support remote participation, and I do think it's been a long time coming. We need to set the right expectation, though. If we're fortunate and it passes at this year's town meeting, it becomes a home rule petition. That takes time to make its way through the legislature. And so we need to be doing, as Paul said, we need to be doing things, other things sooner. One of the things, the Town Meeting Study Committee is working on this, and one of the things that you should be aware of is that we have hearings. Every single article that is brought in front of town meeting has a hearing ahead of time where you can learn and you can give feedback to the sponsor of the article. So that's one way you can participate. Those are recorded, or they're on Zoom. So there are other ways that you can participate before town meeting. And some of the other more creative ideas I'm hearing is developing little video skits or video podcasts that would give you some information about the warrants or the articles that are coming up. So we've got to be a little bit more creative and realize that the home rule petition is going to take time.
Yeah, I can save us all time here. Yes, the answer is yes. So absolutely agree in remote attendance of town meeting. I think that should be in conjunction with live town meeting for folks who really value that, and then you have that live dialogue that can be seen and heard there, as well as, obviously the folks watching on their monitors or whatever. Agreed, it's going to take some time. I think in the interim, using clickers is a really good start of something that we can do next. I also think that we could take a look at skinning down the number of warrants that that are articles that are on the warrant. You know, some of those are not ready for prime time. It's pretty clear when you arrive and you listen to that. So I think skinnying down the things that we have to discuss and debate at town meeting, using clickers, and then eventually moving to remote.
Next question is about the Peabody property. What are your goals for the Peabody property, how it might be used, and how do you envision ensuring that the community has a voice in that decision-making process? And we're going to start with Paul.
Peabody School, it's one of the many pieces of property that we can plan around. I think that Peabody School will be turned over officially from the school to the town at this town meeting. And that'll start a process, which I'm sure will involve public participation. All of these land use projects, whether it's MCI or 2229 or repurposing of Peabody, will definitely involve public participation. Now, what could become of that building? It is not in great shape. We know that because to justify the Concord Middle School, a complete analysis of the shape of that building was done. So it's going to take some money to refurbish that. For what purpose? There are many potential purposes. Long term, it's a building and it could create some really interesting affordable housing in that area. To partition a building into affordable housing would be a possibility. I'm in favor of keeping the building as long as we can repurpose it as opposed to knocking it down and doing something else with it. Town offices, I think Ripley School is outliving its purpose as far as school administration. So it's possible that school administration could move in part or in whole there. And moving school administration with other town functions would increase this interaction between silos within town. So I think cohabitating a structure like Peabody with multiple town entities would be another good idea. Peabody also has a really nice athletic field, the Cushing Field, and we need to maintain that as well. So there's more to Peabody than just the building. It's an interesting property. We have an opportunity and some work to do in engaging the public.
Yeah, I think it would be a mistake to think about what we should do with Peabody in isolation of all the other pieces of property that are becoming available to the town. We've got 2229 Main, MCI, we have a parcel at 91B Main Street. So we have a lot of land in play right now. The Select Board recently impaneled a land use group, working group, to put together, work on something that we're calling the matrix, which will look at what are the parcels of land that are becoming available and what are the uses that the town has. And right now, the two urgent uses are a place for our new DPW, because DPW is outgrown where they are, and also our public safety. Public safety and DPW have been waiting for years while we built our schools, and now it's time to turn our attention to them and update them. If any of you want a tour, it's surprising how crowded and I think we've waited too long. So we need to think about all of these things together and not just look at Peabody in isolation. I think Paul said some great ideas. Yes, maybe it's school administration, maybe it's dense housing, but to do that without looking at it more holistically, I think would be a mistake. So this land use group has representation from many boards and committees across town, including the school committee. So I just wanted to put a plug in for that. And we're hope to have it up and running in May.
I get her extra 30 seconds. So I think Mary said this very well, actually, that we cannot look at any of these opportunities for development in isolation. We really need to have this grand plan, make sure that that plan addresses the goals and objectives we're trying to reach here in town, and then look at the best use of those properties with that lens. And by the way, I would include the redo of the rotary in that whole plan, so MCI, 229 Main, et cetera, et cetera. So now, I had some time, I actually drove up to the Peabody property the other day and drove around. Hadn't been there before since my sons went to Sanborn. And it's a really beautiful property. I know there's some fields that the neighbors, I've talked to a couple, would really like to make sure we maintain. that property, probably more than any of them, has to make sure, and I think this is the second half of this question, is have to make sure that we include the folks who neighbor that property in the development of that property. You know, I would say holistically, one of the things we need to do with all these developments is we need to bring additional revenue, non-real estate, residential real estate revenue into this town. So we have to look at commercial property development so we can give some tax relief broadly and broaden that tax base. The Peabody one is not obvious to me how we could do that and bring commercial in, but certainly holistically we need to do that. But we absolutely need to work closely with that neighborhood.
You know, I think we're making it hard for everyone because we're all agreeing.
Yeah.
So I was, I agree. Will you? Yes, please. I absolutely agree, and I think Mary is absolutely right to have this matrix going. I'm obviously, since I'm on the MCI committee, very focused on that, and since it's such a huge parcel, worried about that. But I think what you're all saying, it needs to be looked at all together. We need to look at our resources, we need to look at the needs, and we absolutely need to think about the fact that it's a residential neighborhood. Now, whether or not it's housing or administration, I kind of like the idea of administration building. I think the Kai's Road site, where the current DPW is also an interesting location for housing, so maybe we think about doing something between those two buildings. I'm also in favor of keeping that field because I know how important it is to abutters and to many people. So I wish I had something more to add, but I agree with all of you, and nice work.
Thanks.
Okay. Next question is about town boards and committees. Many town boards and committees struggle to attract and retain new members, particularly younger members. What specific initiatives would you implement to diversify the pool of residents serving on these boards and committees? And we'll start with Mary.
Great. Actually, it's funny. We are right now rewriting APP 10, which guides how we recruit people. But I did reach out to the Mass Municipal Association had a webinar, and I watched it, and I got some great ideas from our neighbor Lincoln as far as how to get younger people involved in the boards and committees. And some of the ideas they gave me were go to sports events and try to recruit people at sports events. That's one great way to do it. Have the meetings at different times of day. We already talked about that as far as how to meet people who have young children, and bath time is not a good time to have meetings. And then the other idea that I came up with was I didn't come up with it, I heard it, was to bring more high school students into committee work so that we can actually start to get them to start exercising some of their civic muscles and also get more young ideas into the mix. So those are some of the concrete ideas that I came up with by watching the webinar, talking to my counterparts in Lincoln as far as how to get more. Also, reducing the number of committees might be good, but that's really hard to do. So I'll stop there.
Yeah, I'll maybe be a little controversial and say that I think the way you attract people to committees is make them relevant and make them impactful in town. I think Mary and I would probably disagree here. We have 65 committees. I think that's far too many. If you were to look at some of those committees, you would probably scratch your head and say, why is that a committee, not, say, a club or something like that? Still relevant, still important, but not a committee that takes not only time of our residents, but also leans on town staff, for example, to support them. It leans on the select board. Each select board member has to be a liaison to different committees. I think 65 is too many. I would actually look to trim that down pretty significantly and then make the ones that are remaining relevant, so when people do volunteer, they know they're going to get something done. Now, the other thing I will say is I've talked to at least 2 or 3 people in different coffees who have said they have volunteered for committees and never been contacted. I've had that same experience, by the way. So I think we need to do a better job of following up of the people who are interested and make sure we respect their volunteerism and that they're reached out to appropriately.
I guess I'll be a little controversial as well. I have not been thrilled with how the committee selection process has happened recently. I have heard from maybe one, maybe two, more than two, three, maybe even four people who have said, I put in a green card and I never heard back. Why haven't I heard back? I think it gets a little insular, and I think the people are put on committees and they're known. And listen, I'm one of these people. I've been put on a bunch of committees, but I think you really do need to go outside and look at people who haven't been put on committees yet and talk to them. I mean, I'm proud to say that I've gotten a couple people on committees because I've convinced them to do it. It wasn't necessarily easy, but I also. I don't think we need 60-plus committees, because don't forget that all of those committees also take staff time. So there's complaints about, well, minutes aren't up online on time, or all of these things. And I just think it would be great for us to look at these committees and see what's really necessary, and, as Joe said, make them more relevant.
So, three words here. One is education, one is communication, and the other one's outreach. I think there's a view that even though there are 450 odd people serving on committees, which is astounding, there's just a lot of people volunteering their time. I think that when the vacancies occur, I think there's not enough communication that those vacancies are occurring. I'm going to, probably tonight, several answers will be to lean on the Concord Bridge. Concord Bridge is a great communication tool. I think we have to use the bridge to talk about the committees, to talk about the vacancies that are available. Just to educate the community on just what these committees do and what the needs are. There are some needs that are quite specific. There are people, we're looking for an engineer on a committee, or we're looking for a development expert on a committee. Some seats on the committee are open. I think the select board and the liaisons have an opportunity and an obligation to examine each of these individual openings and see where can that be filled by a new person? Or if there's a person that's been on a committee for a long time, can we rotate that person off to make room for another person? So I think the select board and the liaisons and the chairs of these committees need to have an active role in recruiting and looking for new participants. So it's not viewed as a closed shop. I think also there are opportunities, and I know I've talked to the DEI Commission about certain commissions appointing people to those other committees. We have to have more of that kind of cross-fertilization. We have some of that. I'm on the Recreation Commission. I'm appointed to several different committees. I think we have opportunities for committees to have this cross-fertilization. But on the new participants, I think we have to do more active outreach and communication on what those opportunities are.
Our next question is about workforce housing, and this we'll start with Joe. As the town increases its stock of affordable housing through various development projects coming online in the next few years, what specific programs, changes in zoning, et cetera, would you support to increase the availability of workforce housing in Concord?
Again, I think this needs to be part of our holistic plan that says, what do we need, right? How much of this do we need? How much affordable housing do we have and want? How much workforce housing do we want? We have these several different plots for redevelopment, and we should look at each of them and where workforce housing could go. I also think, though, it's important to do, and I lived in Boulder, Colorado before coming here. They had this exact same issue, and they solved it, at least in part, by changing some of the zoning to allow for infilling, so higher density development. I know that the neighborhood I live in, a few years ago, there was an article passed that said they could develop that multifamily houses could be developed in that region. I think that's another thing we should think about. If it's good for, one area, maybe, why isn't it good for the entire town? My only point is that we should look at infill, we should look at these development opportunities that we have, and make sure that is dictated or guided by this holistic plan we have, and we know exactly how much we need of what different kind of housing.
Sure. Tough question. You know, I think we're going to struggle when you talk about infill housing. I mean, we like open space, we like land, and we want to have more dense housing. How do we get all of this accomplished? Again, working on the MCI site, I think there's a huge opportunity there. There will be housing there. It's part of the state's mandate for what's going to happen there. What that housing looks like is still up in the air, so there's opportunities there, absolutely. There is a warrant article this year about changing the accessory dwelling unit zoning bylaw, which I saw a bunch of these come before us on the zoning board applications for these, and it is to get rid of the requirement that it is an owner-occupied unit, and I am in favor of that. It also allows you to build up to 1,000 square feet by right. I think that is fantastic, and I am definitely in favor of it, and I think, again, I think MCI is a big opportunity as well.
In talking to people since December and doing my research, affordable housing has come up so many times, and it's really complicated. First of all, we don't live in a community where affordability runs off the tip of your tongue. We're not an affordable community. So how can we make housing affordable for the workforce, for people who want to buy into the community, for older people that want to downsize? These are at least three stakeholders that we have to solve this kind of problem. We do have new land where we can think about that. But I think we can't stop working on affordable housing. Right now, we're right at about the 10% level on affordable housing, and we have to kind of keep working on that. The Community Preservation Committee and others invest in affordable housing. There's ample dollars, but there's not enough land for it. And I think there's not enough visioning of the type of affordable housing that we need, especially for workforce. So when I think workforce, I don't know how you think about it, it's our town staff, fire, police, town staff, DPW, people that don't work here that don't live in town. What creative ways do we have to kind of solve those problems? Well, we're talking about a new fire station, a new police station, a new DPW. Can we envision those locations when we site those facilities, also citing small affordable housing around those communities as well? Middlesex Academy, Concord Academy do have workforce housing in the vicinity of those institutions. So I think we need to think about workforce housing as a subset of affordability, but think about it creatively to accommodate the people as part of the workforce.
Great, thanks. First of all, I'm a huge advocate of what we call workforce housing because it would enable us to welcome new families into the town. It would help our seniors downsize and stay in town. And the one thing I learned from my political science class when I took as an undergrad is you have to have a middle class if you want to have a thriving democracy. So all of these things are reasons why I think we need workforce housing to keep our middle here in Concord. We are not good at that. What we've been doing so far is we've been funding onesie-twosie units around town, either through the use of free cash, CPC funding, or ARPA funds. And we need to learn how to get denser housing at a lower cost per unit by working with developers who have access to the tax credits and the other state and federal programs. So we have a lot of work to do as far as understanding how to identify developers who know this is their business. They know how to do this. We enable it through zoning, and I think that was a great idea that you had. But we need to learn who are the developers. My daughter runs an affordable housing company up in Newburyport, and they know how to do this. So we need to stop trying to do it ourselves. We've been taking the do-it-yourself model. We're spending $500,000 per unit. We can't do that anymore. We need to partner with the right developers to get dense, affordable workforce housing.
Abigail, I didn't use my full 2 minutes. Can I just say one more thing?
No, that was a no.
It's brilliant. It will change the whole world. Okay.
And you know what? You can go person to person and chair to The next question is one of our greatest hits and one of the more frequently submitted questions, and I'm going to read it with the dramatic effect that I believe it was submitted with. Cell service is notoriously bad throughout Concord and West Concord and continues to get worse, affecting our business community and safety. Also, it's just frustrating and incredibly inconvenient. How will you work to make actual progress on improving this for residents of Concord? We're going to start with you, Elizabeth.
So this is one of these things that I've been very frustrated with and may have pushed me to think about running. Enough is enough, as I keep saying. If the public safety officials say that this is a problem, that they can't call back to their stations from a secure line in the center of town, enough is enough, we need to get it done. Okay, so what does that mean? I have not, everyone has heard me, I'm sure, getting bored of hearing me say, I have not had a seat at the table to hear exactly what the negotiations have been, but I have sure heard enough around the edges to think that there were many missteps that would have turned off some of the providers, that would have put out RFPs that were unnecessary. I know probably a year ago at this point, we were told, well, the Kai's Road site can't be considered because you can see it from the national park and you would have to apply to the national park and that might take 2 years. So here's an idea, apply. Maybe we don't build it, but you could at least apply and start the process. I would say this is another warrant article to expand the overlay district for wireless. I am absolutely in favor of that, but I'm also in favor of maybe just calling up the cell phone providers and having a conversation with them. I haven't had that opportunity yet because I haven't been at the table, but why not? It needs to get done.
So I think if we satisfy the cell phone problem, that we're going to exacerbate the problems in the schools and the use of cell phones. So I don't know. It's a conundrum. I think the topic of cell phones is one of the few things in town that makes me angry. I've been here a long time, and so I turned my anger into finding out why are we in this situation. So I sat down with the deputy town manager, Megan Zamuto, and she showed me sort of the history. And there's history in PowerPoint slides and communication. You know, it started with problems with electromagnetic radiation and health effects, and it's kind of morphed around. But the fact of the matter is, right now, the zoning, we have very few places in town. If you look at the zoning maps, we can actually place a cell tower. Mm-hmm. So we really have to work on the zoning issues. There's one warrant article to kind of loosen up with the bylaws on zoning to permit more sites. I think we need to look at more sites. We need to ask Tricon Church to re-engage with Verizon to see why the cell tower is not in there when there was a T-Mobile cell tower there. But I think we're on the verge of getting a handle on this. I think there's now a willingness, and the select board has had this as a goal for a while. There's going to be a cell tower at the landfill, but we have permitting issues. We can't get in our own way. We have to look at the blockages for permitting these towers. Even when we have a developer, it's still going to take a while. We have to go through our process. And what practices, what bylaws do we have that are getting in the way of cell towers? Because cell towers is an urgent security and urgent health issue. It's a big risk for the community. So we need to satisfy that requirement by looking at our bylaws and by looking at more sites and changing our zoning laws. I think a lot of that is in progress. I think the realization is there, but we have to move on it quickly.
I'm in agreement. I think we're all frustrated, not only because of public safety, but it also impedes commercial development, the fact that we have bad cell service in town. We do have an RFP that we do have a vendor for the landfill site, which will provide cell service to the high school. We also are going to issue an RFP for Kai's Road, so that will help, I hope, with downtown. But as we've already mentioned, us at town meeting several years ago, approved an overlay district that reduces the location to less than 0.6% of the land area of Concord. So let me put that a different way. Right now, Concord is 24.5 square miles. We approved an overlay district that restricts 24.36 of those miles. In other words, we said we don't want cell towers in this area. Right? So 94% of the land is not available. And we need to change that. We need to take that law, we need to amend it, we need to rescind it, we need to go out back and shoot it. But we need to get rid of it, okay? There is something happening this year at the town meeting that will make an adjustment. I'm not an attorney. I don't know if that's enough. It's a start, but I think the planning board needs to make, and it's a planning board issue, it's not a select board issue. The planning board needs to make this a priority for next year to get that law rescinded.
Yeah, I think we're going to all be in violent agreement here.
Yes.
But I would really ditto everything that Elizabeth said. I think that we have been in our own way in some ways with making RFPs that just frustrated some of the vendors, not making applications when we could have made them. And frankly, this is something that should have been done yesterday, and I would make it an absolute top priority to make sure that we have cell service in town as soon as humanly possible, period. I think this is one of those things where I mentioned analysis paralysis in my little introduction. I think that's where we are. And I think we're also at this point where we have to recognize that no answer is going to make every single person happy, right? So we have to just accept that. That's what leaders do, right? You make decisions, even sometimes when they're not going to be completely popular. I think we're well past time to do that. The other thing, and this is part of the point I was going to make earlier, is we should learn from what other communities have done. We're not the first community to cross this road. And I would have said the same thing about the workforce housing, is other communities have done this. Let's learn from them. Let's not reinvent the wheel every time we come across a problem. It seems to me that we do that a lot, and I would say we can cut out a lot of time and expense by learning from other communities.
Okay, so this is going to be the last question from the stage, and then we'll move to audience questions, and Paul will be the first to answer this. Obviously, the amenities building has been a topic of conversation. Will you be supporting the warrant article to fund the amenities building at town meeting this year?
Yeah, absolutely supporting the warrant article. The amenities building has been a vision for a while, and I think we need to complete that vision. I think it's needed. There's ADA accessibility. It's one of these problems that's been out there for a while. I think now's the time to do that. It has come before the Community Preservation Committee, full transparency. That application came in late at the CPC. We debated whether to accept that. We did tell the applicant that there was money available probably next year's CPC funding. But I think they were wise to put the warrant article through because they need that building. We had this procedural stumbling block on the CPC, unfortunately, and that's why it wasn't funded by CPC. So the entire CPC unanimously was in favor of it, but there was it was a late application policy that was in place, and we didn't have enough time to change that policy. So yes, I am in favor of it. I think the time has come for that building, and we should move on.
Yes, I think we need a new, we need an amenities building. It's not a new one. We need an amenities building. I know the school committee has hired a consultant, and they're coming with different ideas, so I'll be interested to see which of those designs the school committee brings forward at the hearings. I will say, to Paul's point about CPC funding, I would really urge the school committee that if this passes this year at town meeting, that they apply again in the fall and hopefully get some CPC money to reduce the burden on the taxpayer for the amenities building. So yes, we missed the window this year, but next year is still available.
Yeah, again, I think violent agreement, absolutely needed. I think it's a risk for our community in many different ways by not having it. And frankly, this is another one of those things that I would probably respectfully disagree with some of the assessment of the process here, that this could have been done. And I think there were times when we used technicalities to not move on this when we could have and should have. This is one of those things that ground should have been broken already on.
When I first started running, there were some things I didn't know. There are still many things I don't know. When this issue came to my attention in more depth than it had originally, because I hadn't been paying attention to it as much as I have been now, I'm going to tell you, I'm kind of appalled by it. I think these procedural stumbling blocks that you mentioned could have easily been overcome. I think now to go to the town for money when the money is sitting there is a little bit appalling. I think that I've heard a lot of this animosity, and we've talked, the school committee candidates talked about this. I know people don't like when I use the word animosity. Tension between the school committee and the select board. I have been surprised by the amount that people say, well, I can't believe the school would come back and ask for more money. Because to me, an amenities building, a bathroom for all people, including my 80-something-year-old mother and father who will come watch their grandkids, is not a school versus the town issue. It is an issue for everyone. We should have used the money that we have sitting in an account that's not being used, no matter that a deadline was missed. There's lots of arguments we could have about how that happened. But yes, I will be supporting it. I think it's a shame that it wasn't done already, and I think there are some opportunities here for cross-collaboration and some work between the school committee and the select board so that there is not as much of a them versus us attitude, especially when it comes to budgets.
Okay, we have time for maybe one or two questions from the audience, if there are any, or if everyone's already thinking about what show they're going to watch before they go to bed tonight. Then I'll ask one last from the stage then. Of course, because we're doing the greatest hits. MCI Concord. My 5-year-old has suggested a unicorn petting zoo. This does not seem totally out of line with some other suggestions for the property. What are your priorities for the redevelopment of MCI Concord, and what specific types of development would you like to see on the parcel? I'm going to give everybody 1 minute. Yep, I'm starting. Okay. Oh, no, I'm starting with Mary. I'm sorry. You're up.
You're starting with me. Okay. I could answer this question as an individual, but I'm a select board member, and I'm going to answer it as a select board member. And as a select board member, I need to listen to what is the advice from the MCI advisory board, what is the advice from the consultants, and what does the community want. I have ideas about what I'd like to see there, but my job is to listen to what other people want. But I will tell you my ideas anyway, because I'm sitting here. I would like to see a hotel, actually. I'd like to see the superintendent's building turned into a hotel. And bottom line for me is whatever we do there, it has to be revenue positive. In other words, it has to bring in more revenue through a combination of housing and commercial development that brings in more revenue than it draws through services.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I think, yes, we have to listen to the committee, we have to listen to the consultants, the community, but then we also have to understand what do we need as a community, and again, in relation or holistically with the other developments that we have, opportunities that we have in town, so that we say, this is what we need overall, and I keep talking about this overall plan, this is what we need overall, and this is what MCI is best suited to make sure we reach those visions and goals that the plan sets out. Absolutely, I love the fact that Mary mentioned this. It has to be revenue positive. I'm glad to see folks talking about that because we need to broaden the tax base here in town. I just think whatever it is, it should be multi-use, make this a better place to work, live, and play, and be complementary to the other town centers that we have across town.
So I'll tell you my personal vision, and then I'll tell you some thoughts I have from being on the MCI Advisory Committee. So I would like to see an innovation district of some sort. What does that mean? It would be, again, in my imagination, it's not a unicorn petting zoo, but maybe a little bit of that, no. A satellite college campus that focuses on tech innovation, some tech incubators, getting some more commercial base there, and I own a small business in town, but I don't think that's what we're looking for. I think we're looking for something a little bit bigger, tech companies that could bring in more of a base. Like I mentioned, it is definitely going to have housing. Let's have that housing be creative, not cookie cutter, not just something you could see in any development anywhere. You know, and I think these could all be centered around climate goals. My concern is that we are not advocating hard enough for control of the property. This is incredibly complicated with so many different people involved, including Mass DOT and the state, et cetera. But I hope that we push very hard for control over the site.
Yeah, each of the properties that are available, potentially available, MCI Concord, 2229, Peabody, they're all unique and different. MCI Concord is uniquely suited for commercial development. It has a wastewater treatment plant right there. It's right on the rotary that's going to be fixed, thank goodness, at some point. DOT is actually reinvigorated. So it's really an excellent place for a development, mixed-use development like, if you're familiar with Maynard Crossing, Maynard Crossing was just a big open field, but now it has a supermarket, it has housing, it has lots of interesting retail, and it generates $2-3 million worth of revenue. We can do that. We can mix housing with revenue generation at that spot. We also have Junction Village, which is another piece of property which we can put housing there. So there are lots of interesting things we can do there. But the public is going to have a say in that because MCI Advisory Committee is going to put forth several different scenarios for discussion. So it's not what the select board wants or what I want or anybody. The public's going to have a big say in that.
Folks, we have ended exactly on time. I'd like to give all of us a round of applause for that. So thank you to the select board candidates. Thank you to all of you for coming out tonight. And don't forget to vote, please.
Cool.